Hello, folks. Welcome. It is Wednesday. It's Jeff Cook again, and we are moving around. We're quite lucky again tonight to be in a beautiful kitchen here at Waterford. We're obviously doing a few things. You caught up with us on Monday, and we were with Craig chatting about salt and all things salt. There's Craig. Glass of wine in hand, obviously. And most of our wine's almost finished. The guys have been having a fair bit of it, but nothing wrong with that. We've moved our day and a half forward to Wednesday because special occasion, end of the 45-day challenges tonight as well. So a lot of you are hopefully celebrating that. So we are here to experience something a little bit different. We've got a beautiful dish lined up tonight. And we've also got a little bit of wine that's chilled for us, and we're going to chat through that in a little bit. So hopefully you guys popped out to the shops and picked up everything. We'll run through the ingredients just now and get everything going. A little bit of prep to do, but it's a nice, simple, delicious dish. Craig will run us through it in a little bit, and we'll go through that. Hopefully you've got some wine on hand that'll go well with it. We gave you some options. You can see them up there, just giving you a little view of things. The Kevin Arnold Shiraz and the Woodford's Rosemary. That's how you say it, Rosemary. Rosemary. So that's what's in my glass. I'm having a little bit of that. Gents behind me are having a little bit of the Shiraz, which is lovely as well. We've got a few minutes. We're going to talk through some things. Firstly, a little bit about kind of Woodford. Obviously, we're here on Saturday again for our workout as well. Jeff Games, culmination of the month. And we're going to be here live on Saturday, which is going to be epic, and have a little brunch afterwards as well. But for now, we're in the Salt Kitchen, and we're going to cook a beautiful fish a little bit later. Guys, thanks for having us. Looking forward to this tonight. Guys have done a fair bit of this, so they know everything. I was warned. I need to tell you guys, make sure your oven's at 180, because the fish is... Thank you. Yeah. Make sure it's hot, because when the fish goes in, we want it to cook, and that's how we're going to keep on time tonight. A little bit of prep's been done, and we'll run through all that in a little bit, so we can maybe bring up the ingredients shortly. Craig, you want to chat us through the whole kind of background of this dish? Yeah. What brought it about, and something you've done before?
Yes, absolutely. So this dish goes back a wee while. I did some travels out to Portugal, and obviously they're famous for their bacalhau, and what I decided to do was I'd experienced bacalhau in Portugal, and obviously it's a different process completely, but what I enjoyed about it was the moisture that you can gain in the fish itself, even though they're two different concepts. So this particular fish, what we did was we kept it in basic line of what I got served in the restaurant. We've amended it a little bit at the minute, but the main objective is to get that moisture, because as I said earlier, when we chatted, that the salt itself takes moisture out, and then when you make it like this, it actually increases moisture. So it's a complete reverse effect. And I was absolutely fascinated by how that can actually change and actually make a better experience.
So, if you guys were with us on Monday, Craig gave us a lovely background into the different types of salts and the collection he's got, and we chatted a little bit about the health benefits and how it's used in preservation, but something quite different here. We're putting a beautiful little crust on it, and we'll go through that in a little bit. So, salt and egg whites was the crust.
The two main components. Some people add a bit of flour if you prefer, but for me, I like to keep it pretty natural and real. Yeah.
And great for a dinner party. A good effect at the end. Crack it open. We're going to get a lovely crust, and then we're doing it with some mash. We gave you a low carb option, if necessary, either collie mash or lovely potato mash, and then some salad. Everything's laid out beautifully, and we'll run through that in a second, which is great. We've also got Damien here, who's put a lot of this together for us, and suggested the wines tonight. But Damien, you want to let us know a little bit about kind of maybe some history, how this all came about, Waterford. Let's chat about what's been going on here. Yeah.
So the farm was bought by a chap called Jeremy Orr, who started Dimension Data, and he went into partnership with a guy, Kevin Arnold. And Kevin Arnold was Mr. Shiraz in South Africa. He was the guy who created the Russell Freda reserve blend together, the estate blend together, Delheim reserve blend together. And so he had this name and legacy of making wine in South Africa. He was one of the core guys who put the Cape Winemakers Guild together, and so through that, quality production in South Africa would not have happened as fluidly. So, really sort of prestigious combination of the two. We bought 3 parcels of land cobbled together, so we're in a horseshoe shape, and on the farm when we bought it, there was citrus, so naartjies and lemon. And then there was Chardonnay, Sauvignon, and Cabernet. So immediately we started planting. We have now 11 red varietals. And so Kevin planted according to the soil. Wine is made in the soil. So the winemaker is the custodian who takes great grapes and makes great wine. So rather than planting commercially, we planted as the soil dictated. And Kevin knew what the soil needed in terms of what varietal grape to plant. He worked in Napa with Mondavi. He'd been a fan of Antinori in Italy. He worked and studied the Rhone in terms of Shiraz, and so we quickly started putting these vines together. So we've 120 hectares. 50% of that is a sustainability project, and then 49 hectares planted to grapes, and the rest is to olives and to Satsuma and Clementine naartjie.
Lovely, and it's a beautiful estate as well. If you've never been to Waterford, I was lucky enough to study a little bit in studies and haven't been back here for a while, but driving in, and for whoever's joining us on Saturday, absolutely beautiful. Everything looks great, beautifully put together. They've obviously got the restaurant for lunches now, and the wine tasting all the time. And you suggested 2 wines for us tonight. Obviously, the Kevin Arnold Shiraz, which we call it the flagship. Yes.
Well, the flagship's a wine called the Gem, which is named after our owner. But yes, there's many names, family names that run through the wines. Kevin Arnold is one, obviously. Rosemary is another, so I'll mention that when we talk about that wine. But yeah, Kevin, this is one of the first wines we made. Nobody knew who Waterford was, so when we made the brand, we named the winery after the waterfalls that fall off the Stellenbosch Mountains after the rain. And so we went to market, and people just didn't understand who Waterford Estate was. So we needed to make a brand which people recognised, and we made Kevin Arnold Shiraz. So everybody then knew Kevin Arnold. So I want Kevin Arnold. And Kevin was quite clever. He said, okay, you want Kevin Arnold, then you must also list or have the Cabernet from Waterford Estate. It's the same farm, I'm making the same wine. But we leveraged the brand equity he had in his name across the Waterford Estate, and now one would argue we're about 50-50. So,
yeah. And for this dish?
Yeah, so Craig mentioned bacalhau. Actually, I had the privilege of working in Portugal doing a harvest there. So I was up about 200 meters above the Douro in an area called Sabrosa, and they grow varieties Vozinho and Ravagato and so on. And those varieties are quite high in acid, quite punchy, and quite elegant. And the rosemary is exactly that wine. So it's a Blanc de Noir, which means it's made from black grapes, or white made from black, essentially. And then that color is just the skin contact that it has, which really just touches the sides. It makes it this beautiful pink salmon. And we wanted to make a wine which was much more Provençal style, so that high acid, really great with fish, really great with that kind of salty dishes. And so this is the ideal wine for that thing. We wanted to make it available to your viewers as well. So of course it's available through major shopping areas like you mentioned, Woolworths, etc. I'm sure most of you bought the ingredients there. So Woolworths stock both of these wines actually. And then the Kevin Arnold is a bit of a wild card. You know, Shiraz is not normally the ideal pairing you would assume for fish, but you know, we are in a generation where nobody dictates to everybody what they like and what they do. And so why shouldn't you have Shiraz or Merlot or something else with a fish dish? This fish dish is quite meaty. It's got salt and characters in it, and Shiraz just chilled down to a little bit temperature below your room temperature will just soften the punchy tannin, but not lose the phenolic character. And so that can work pretty nicely. So.
Lovely. So let us know what's in your glass tonight. Hopefully you've got a couple of these, and they're going to go beautifully with our fish. And Craig obviously does quite a fair bit in pairing salt and wine, which is quite interesting. and we'll hear a little bit more about it as we go through. So he'll be able to let us know. You've got Bo over there in the corner as well, who I think is going to get put to work. He's going to be our main man who's putting everything together by the looks of it. So let us know who's all here tonight. Check in, say how's it. Let us know how you guys are doing. We'll do a quick hello through everybody. Google is here. How are you? Pat Govender is celebrating, obviously. Hazel, how are you? Candace and Taryn is really looking forward to this. Lauren Linda Freitas, good evening to you. Jessa Lowe is here. All the familiar names and faces. Beautiful. Lovely. Thanks for joining us, guys. Joy Johnson says, hi, Chef Craig. You used to chat to my chef students a long time ago.
Sure.
So familiar name and face. Noel saying, please don't go too fast. We won't. We're here for a good time, so don't worry. We're not going to rush you guys at all. Jethro, Coach Jethro is doing this one tonight. That's probably because we're speaking about wine, so I'm sure that's why he's getting involved. Renee, stunning wine estate of gorgeous wines. Lovely. Just poured a glass of red. Renee, well done. Eve, good evening. Adele says good evening, and wine is certainly on the menu. Sherry Williamson says the rosemary is one of her favourites as well.
Sherry's my friend.
Oh, lovely.
She is.
So that wasn't a plug at all.
A serial Jeffer.
Yeah. Actually, so you're on Jeff for a while. Tell us how it was and the journey, and with Coach Chappay for a good few months. Up until quite recently, and was speaking quite highly of it. So, was it a good experience?
Yeah, it was excellent. Yeah. It was actually introduced to me by Sherry.
Okay. Sherry, well done. Thank you very much.
So, plug for you guys.
Yeah.
And I did it for about 6 months, just over actually. And I lost about 20 centimeters. I went from 89 kgs to 82 kgs. I lost size in my waist. Which is where I needed to lose it. The menu was super easy for me, so I wasn't shocked too much. I enjoyed the 2 blocks of 70% dark Lindt chocolate every night. Yeah. I looked forward to it every night. But it wasn't too hard to follow. I enjoyed it, and the training that Tope put into me, and then the relationship that we brokered between us was really close. So actually. It was a good ride. Yeah, enjoyed it.
So, see guys, you can even work in the wine industry and still get things together, which is fantastic. So, it wasn't too hard to do, which is important, and still got some results, which is great. And a lot of those habits still kind of hanging around now.
Sure, I still take photographs of my food. I just get to that point and go, oh, I don't need to do this anymore. I drop my phone. So, yeah.
It's ingrained now. Renee, 45 days on Jono's Table Mountain Challenge is done. Exactly, you're drinking tonight. So beautiful. Well done for everyone who has got the 45 days. And today is the day to celebrate for that. For everyone who's on the 21-day challenge, you've got a few more days to go. But maybe just have a glass of wine, work a little bit harder. We can do that. About sustainability, have a little bit of fun. It's okay. We can get that done because we're eating well tonight. So. Ingredients, let's go through those and we'll recap kind of what's been happening. So let's bring up the second screen and we'll go through them all. Start there.
Most important, I think, tonight is our little field bag for Cape Salmon. It hasn't actually got a field bag, it's more got the gills here that's quite yellow. When you're buying fish, just look out for the eyes. If they don't pop out, they're quite horrible. And then we move on, important when we cook, might not be when you're on diet, but butter. We've got a bit of cream, take it through everything now. So there's the cream, thyme and garlic, and just to shake up everything. We've got potatoes for our mash, I don't know. Yeah. And a little bit more healthy, we've got our carrots, cucumber, broccoli, tender stem broccoli, with butter lettuce, grated parmesan, we cheese it,
you haven't started grating.
If you haven't started grating, please get grating. A little bit of peppers, so yellow peppers. And then we've got our egg whites, which we need for our fish. And a tiny bit of salt, just to make sure that it's seasoned properly. So these are the ingredients that we need for tonight. If you haven't got this much salt, we don't need all of it, just half probably. But yeah, there we go. So that's ingredient list number 1. And
if you're going to keep it low carb, just according to your plans, whatever you sort of needed, you can do the cauli mash instead of the potato mash. So just have some steamed cauliflower and we're going to mash that instead. We're going to add a little bit of extra flavor into the mash from those ingredients. Everything's up there on the left, but on the right, whatever side that is. And fish, we're going to get a good crust on it. We're going to do it with some veg and we're going to do it with some mash. You can play around with that a little bit. We're going to show you how the guys here do it for us. So, just want to see any questions that came in there. Kath, you're going to get some fresh fish this weekend, so we'll be testing it then. You need to feed 12 people. Get a nice big fish thing. That'll be lekker. Do a nice one. Obviously, it's a full fish, which is great. Joy's fish doesn't have the skin on. Still going to be alright. If you don't get with a whole fish, you're going to struggle.
Could be challenging.
Could be challenging. Just do a slightly smaller amount of salt and a thinner layer on the actual fish. And higher heat. I think higher heat in the oven might work. Yeah.
Get a little quicker. Clinton says the guy in the blue shirt is very debonair. He made his
Facebook trolls.
Yeah. All right. So, what step 1? What do we need to get going with?
So I just want to add, like, obviously Bo and I in this whole story together, and we've been here at Waterford for the last 3 months.
Yeah.
So it's quite a nice and new operation for us. We've been doing this for probably the last 6 years, me a little bit longer, but he shares the same pleasure for salt like I do, but in a completely different way in the sense of all the smoking and the pickling and brining, and you saw all those gadgets that were fermenting and making bubbles and all kinds of crazy stuff. That's his experimentation on the scientific side. But yeah, I was going to run ahead with that fish crust and take you through that.
Yeah. So, number 1, start with potatoes. You need to get the mash on. It's going to cook for about 20 minutes. So, I'm going to get my potatoes on our chopping board. We have pre-cooked this a bit because, once again, we want it to happen a little bit quicker. We're not going to pull mash out of our hot box over there, but we are going to cook it a little bit more. So I've got my mash. I'm just cutting my potatoes into small cubes, even size if possible. We're going to get it on the stove, a little bit of water, and get it to the boil pan. Yeah. Here we go. Now another trick with mash. Before you start, rather than just boiling the potatoes and when it's done, mashing it and throwing whatever flavor you want with it, we take a little bit of milk, thyme, and garlic, bring it up to the boil, and leave it to the side. It just adds a bit of flavor to your mash when it's done, and it helps a lot. You'll see the results at the end. So, little pot, got over here. Going with the milk. We're only doing 2 potatoes, so I think that's about 100 mils. And then, if you want that piece of garlic, take the garlic, give it a crush, throw it in, mix, and we're going to get this on the stove top. Add a bit of milk. There you go.
So what's great about that is you're going to get flavour in it. So even if you're doing the cauli mash, you can do it this way. You get lovely flavour into it. Just going to keep it slightly lower carb, which is great. You can kind of play around with it. And milk's going to add a little bit more protein to it as well, so it balances out. Often we think mash is a bad thing because it's high in energy, but it gives us some options, which is better.
Yeah, so the mash is on for cauliflower. It can also be just salt, thyme, butter, roast in the oven. I think that can also work very well for a mash if you don't want to go the whole egg and cream and milk and thyme and garlic root. So that's number 1. Now we've got our little fishy. It just fits in your tray. So I'm just going to throw a little bit of liquid out that's been running off. I've got my fish here, and we're going to start with our salt. There, got that bowl.
Do you want me to mix it for you? And you can just talk.
No, it's cool.
You're right.
So this almost probably asks you
You
to
can take
answer the question that Noel's just asked, but does the salt mixture stick to the fish, or will you just coat it on the tray?
I'm going to show you now. You're going to mix
Watch
a
and
lot.
we will find out.
You're going to mix a lot, and I'm going to cover this whole fish in salt, and we're going to create a small little tandoori of salt over the fish, and it will steam in its own juices. So I'm going to use half of this to start with. Just go. I reckon about 1 kilogram of salt for this fish should be fine. So here we've got, I would say, what's this, about 6 egg whites. Checking on my recipe if I'm lying. 5 to 8 egg whites. I think this is 5 to 8 egg whites. But I can't remember what we put in here. And we're going to mix it through. So the key is don't add all of it at once. You don't want it to be a puree or very wet. You want it to be slightly sticky to your hand. And we're just going to mix it through. Put your hands in there. There we go. It needs to be slightly wet. Just going to pop a nice mixture in there. Okay. So when I lift it up, if you look at it, you run your hands through it. It is sticky, so it is going to stick into little balls. Let's run through it again. And now we're going to start coating the fish. I think this should be enough. Let's everyone get to that texture. Now we're going to start. So take a generous amount, and we're going to start with the head. And we're just going to cover it up. I actually think I might need more. Mix it a little bit more. So you're just going to stick the salt. You don't want to see the fish. You're going to cover it a little bit. Rest it, I would say, I want to say half an hour if you put your finger in. So it just gives a little bit of an indentation there. Just half an hour of salt that we cover it with. So you don't have to season the fish before we do this. I think there is enough salt on there. And yeah, just make sure that it's very tight around the fish. You don't have any air pockets underneath there. Skim. There you are. So cover. This is a time to play. Press it in.
This way. It's just right.
Go. Cool. It's in frame now.
There you go.
There you go again. Just squeeze it all around this fish. So it's very important that the oven is at high temperature because we want the salt to seal. And then what will happen, your meat will start to get a little bit smaller. So there will be fluids and liquids that will come out, but it will sit and steam in your little salt rock that you've created, or your oven that you've created around the fish. So it keeps in all that moisture from the fish. This one doesn't fit completely, but that's okay. Just build up the tail there. Yeah, I think Damien should do this next time.
I was saying, I've done this with beetroot.
With beetroot?
Yeah.
Why?
I've cooked beetroot. It's delicious.
Okay.
So that's actually a good. Are there various things that you can use this method for?
We've done this with lamb. We had it on the menu, and we had a salt rock lamb, and we had the lamb, but that would take 4 hours to cook. So I don't think we got the time tonight to do the lamb. And I think the first recorded recipe of this was 400 years ago. It's the first time that the method was recorded, and you can do pretty much anything. Yeah, it's just building a clay oven or a salt oven around your protein or beetroots. And if you can do beetroot, you can probably do sweet potato,
Pretty much
butternut. I think everything. So
Joy, a quick recap for you because Joy's a little bit lost. So it is just the salt and the egg whites. Mix it so it forms. You could see Bo had it there. It's kind of just a sticky salt mixture, and you're crusting the top of the fish. Simple as that.
See that? Is it in frame?
Perfect. Yeah.
No, so the whole fish is covered. Now this is going to go into an oven at about 180, 190 degrees Celsius, and for about 20-25 minutes. The smaller your fish, the shorter it will go. There you go.
Easy, as simple as that. Nothing else salt, egg whites, make a little doughy, salty thing, cake it in there, in a hot oven at 180. Kat says she's done a lamb roast that way. And bread. I'm going to assume you cook the bread differently. But anyway. So Joy, hopefully that helps. Fish, salt and egg whites, just crust it up. Whatever mash you're doing, that's on the go. So if you're doing a collie mash, which you will be doing on my Each Way Weekly challenge, use the cauliflower and get some flavour into there, but otherwise you're just going to blend it up. Clinton, the potatoes are boiling. Yes. So get those done. If you pre-cook them a little bit, it's just going to save you a bit of time. Otherwise, excuse the pun, there's a little bit of milk, thyme, and garlic that is boiling there with it.
Yeah, that is done. Now ours has come to the boil, so we're going to take it off and just leave it on the side for later. So that is step one. I think Greg will take over now and show you how to make a salad. Grate the salad.
Make it great.
Maple grate.
He's giving you the hard part there.
Yeah, this is the tough
Everything's
part.
done.
All right, so this is kind of the easier part, but also the fun part, because like we've got those vegetables that we mentioned to put in the salad. We've got very simple, obviously, because time is a bit of a limitation, and also the salting things can take a lot longer. So what we've done is we've got our veggies over here, and what I would like to do is just peel some carrots. So you've got a few minutes to catch up. The carrots themselves, you can use all these wonderful colors these days if you like. The dish that it really started out to be, and I got a bit of flack from it, was I made the complete bacalhau dish that I had back then, and the amazing part was grated carrot. And if you had to ask me to put grated carrot on a menu with some lettuce leaves and some tomatoes sliced, I would have said never. But when it comes to pairings, we actually paired it up with the Sauvignon Blanc, and the reason why we did it was for the simplicity, and all those components make absolute sense. So for instance, if you look at things like pairings, and the most important thing, what are we trying to get out of it? So my pleasure on the side, as I said, Bo's more the technical, scientific side. For me, it's more about the wines, the pairings behind them. And what I did was, we did a dinner, one of our first dinners, where we did this baked fish, for instance. And what happened was, one of the winemakers came to me and said to me, the dish is really good and it works nicely with the wine, except there's something that's not 100% right, so perhaps we should rethink the pairing. And I said, did you try it with the salad? The simplicity of those ingredients? And they said no. Went back, tried the whole componentry together with the salad, with the fish, with everything, and it was absolutely spot on. And it's all about that. If we do pairings, it's got to have all the componentry. So a lot of people get put off and a bit nervous when it comes to things like food and wine pairings, but it's actually very simple. We need to make sure that the wine shines, because it's in the bottle, we can't change it, it's already there. So as chefs, we need to be able to try and work with that and to try and master bringing that food, that it actually ties in really well with the wine specifically. So that's just a little point of interest, and a lot of people don't always eat the componentry on the plate. So the important factor on that would be, if you're going to pair something, you need to have all of those components on your plate, on your fork, and when you taste it with the wine, always wine first, then the componentry, then come back to the wine. And what we want to achieve is that it tastes exactly the same. So it either uplifts the wine, or if it takes it down or spoils it or gets bitter or more tannic, then obviously it's not a great match, and we have to rethink how we do it. So it's just a bit of pointers on food and wine pairing if you didn't know that. What I'm going to do now is just peel some carrots. And as I said, these days we're spoiled with the varieties of vegetables, and in this case our carrots. We have an amazing farm out here at the back of Stellenbosch called Mason's. We buy all our veg for the restaurant. It's all about traceability, quality, etc. And that's really what we'd like to be working with, because the farm shares those same angles when it comes to quality and how wine is produced as well. So I think we're very much on the same track. So over here we've got a yellow carrot. You can see over there, and obviously, oh gosh, I'm dying. It's so hot in this dish.
I've got a question for you from Tanya, right?
Yeah.
Following on a little bit from Monday.
Yeah.
Sorry to jump in there, but Malden salt,
yes.
When we're looking at types of salt that we're using, good option?
Yes, it is, definitely. It's probably one of the big ones that came to South Africa first, and everybody kind of got to experience Malden salt. So it became the benchmark in quality salt, probably 15 years ago, I would say, in that region. Sort of made a big mark, and people sort of used it as a go-to salt. But these days we're even more spoiled, because there's so much more available than there was then. I mean, when we started 12 years ago, there was possibly 3 salts available. And Malden is one of those incredible sea salts that comes from an area called Essex. And from there, it goes through a centrifugal process where it actually just sits in these huge turbines and moves around, and it gets those 3-dimensional flakes on there. That's what gives it that lovely characteristic. So when you're seasoning with it, great salt for finishing in the sense of just crushing it over your food. Feels great because you actually got it in your hand, you're crushing it, you're seeing it on the food, and it just gives wonderful texture and a really nice mouthfeel as well.
I mean, we've got the West Coast salt that we can use like that as well.
Yes, yeah, and it's
fantastic,
equally
and
good.
it's local.
That's right, and again, local is obviously where we want to go. So your Fleur-de-Sel, which is your first formation, as Bo mentioned now, is a great alternative to that. And I think it's priced even better, and we're supporting local as well, you know.
Many has just mentioned, as you said that, Woolies is a really interesting stock right now. I bought the Fleur-de-Sel.
Oh wow, there we go.
That's
Fantastic. And was it the local
So that's the
Fleur-de-Sel?
local one, you said.
Oh, was it the local? Because
The
there's
West
also,
Coast.
so Fleur-de-Sel is just a name for
It's
the
the type of
proceeds.
salt.
Yeah.
But if it's like local, even better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's quite nice is we can actually look out for that on salt labeling and
That's it.
purchasing is trying to find something that's local.
So one is,
Orange salt.
Orange,
Yeah.
the Kalahari.
Yeah.
The desert one.
yeah, that's a great one. The
Yeah.
Bellini, but it's a little bit more specific.
Lenny, you can get with us.
You have to come
Very
here.
special. You have to come
So what
here.
have you just added to your carrots there?
So I thought we could add a nice little twist on this one tonight. Is we made it in pickle. We normally use 100 grams of sugar, and we use 100 grams of vinegar, and we use some peppercorns, some bay leaves if you want, and you can just have some fun. So it just lifts that level of the carrot, which is fresh and delicious. But if you're looking to be a little bit naughtier, this is always a great way for those days where you want to cheat a little bit and just kind of experience it. So a little pickled carrot, it's all becoming very much the norm these days. People are looking for extra flavors, I think, and it just adds that value. We can have a little cheat on the mash as well, which we'll touch on shortly. Okay, so that's our pickle. We just let that marinate. Probably an hour or so would be good enough just to kind of absorb a lot of those flavor profiles, which is fantastic.
Stop cheating.
Now we need to take a break. That's 3 cheats.
There's 3 cheats apparently.
3 cheats so far.
Stop cheating.
Ray needs to pay in his life, I think.
I'm a cheater.
Need some change.
So the thing is, I'm really just like exciting you about your days when you are able to cheat. Something to look forward to, you know? Otherwise it gets a little boring. Even though we're looking out for health, that's the most important thing. All right.
The
So,
other thing I've got a saying that I often share in our sort of guiding people around their 1.5 days, and it kind of goes, you can eat anything you want as long as you make it.
here we go.
And
That's lovely,
that's
wonderful.
it's a good thing to shoot for. If you want to kind of still get away with the nice things in life and have it, but if you've made it, then
It's just unrefined.
Exactly.
It's the refined products that really kill us instead of, table salts, table salts, etc. So we really need to look at. It's going back. I mean, going back the way that old people used to cook. I'm saying old people with the utmost respect. If I lived 80 to 100 years ago, I would know how to ferment and preserve everything that we come across. But we don't, because we can buy it in the shop. Don't.
And we store it as well because
We've
we've got
got
refrigeration, you know, you
yes.
can keep it for a period of time. So yeah, all of those things come into play. But like as you said, you know, as long as you make it yourself, I think it beats half of it. My daughter's grown up with this, she's 11 now, and she's grown up with this philosophy. This is poison, that is poison, and that's and I want to take this to school. No.
Yeah.
And now suddenly she's woken up and realized that actually when she goes to school, she goes, oh, so I just got 2-minute noodles. That's disgusting. Fantastic. And our story's starting to pay off. So finally she gets it. So it works well. All right, and then over here we've got, as I showed you earlier, our little cucumbers. So you can have to quickly peel a bit there. Nice little ribbons, as we call them these days. These you can also pickle. They're delicious as well. But I think our flavors on the salad side of things are going to be light and very flavorsome, but also keeping it a bit real as well. Peppers are really chopped ahead of time. It's those things you see on TV. So get chopping or slicing. Lettuce, I really enjoy working with. Things like these little gem lettuce, which really work nicely. You can, what we started doing at the restaurant, instead of just like breaking the lettuce down, cut it sort of straight through the middle, kind of gives a little bit more body, and it changes things a tad bit as well. Also adds a little bit of a different visual and feel on the plate, which I think is always that point of difference as when you're putting something together, this dish has got to look attractive, it's got to look amazing. And also something a bit of difference, and that's the point I always look for when I cook, is how can I change something to make it visually different? Because everybody does it the same way. So I think that's also a big part of it. So what we'll do now...
And we eat with our eyes, so we want to be pleased by what we see.
Correct, and it's half the battle. I find even sometimes maybe a dish isn't as beautiful, as amazingly flavored or whatever, but when you see it, you go, oh my gosh, it's amazing, eat it, you don't even think twice. So if you're not such a great cook, you can win by beautiful, pretty food.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I've got our broccoli. I'm just going to pop this into our water. Again, always important to season up your water, get it boiling, quick blanch, and then refresh in ice, just to kind of keep that lovely green color. Sometimes you might wonder, how do I keep that color going? But that ice in there just really refreshes it, stops the cooking process, and you get this beautiful green color that you want, or other things that you're going to do. It just helps maintain that color profile. So when I say now we season the water, it's always great because you're going to take in some of those flavors from the salt, which is important. I think also another area we mentioned on Monday was that, you know, people are shy when it comes to seasoning, and I find like our fish is going to be perfect because I think Bo put enough salt on there, but in reality, I think the important factor is that don't be shy and always taste your food as you go along, because I find people tend to think a pinch of salt, as the recipe says so, is not always enough. So we need to always add that if we want to, which I think is the important focus on just bringing the best out of our food. And food is flavoursome if we season properly without overdoing it. And as we mentioned on Monday as well, these quality salts like the Koi Sands, the desert salt from Oryx, we find that those salts are so well flavoured that you actually use less than the commercial salts. So again, yes, it might seem like it's excessive, but you get flavour quickly with very little added. So I think that for me is the most important.
What is a pinch of salt?
Oh, gosh, that's an interesting point. So a pinch would be for me that much, if you can see, which is not a lot. If you've got a 5-litre pot of soup going and everybody puts their pinch in, stirs it up and serves and go, it was okay. But imagine if you put that bit more in, that flavour just jumps out of the pot. And for me, that's the most important thing. Salt enhances those flavors.
Yeah. So when you can taste salt, you've added too much.
Yeah.
When you can taste the leek as perfectly beautiful as it should be, you've added enough salt.
And that's why you've got to taste.
Yeah.
It's always harder to take the salt out.
So
add a little bit, taste, add a little bit more.
In Thai cooking, what they teach you is add your salt from the beginning. So when you saute your onions or fry your onions, season your onions. Then when you add your mushrooms, season your mushrooms. Then when you add your sauce, season your sauce. And at the end, you're not going to have to add any salt because you've seasoned everything that you're using perfectly. And you've rounded off your flavors.
So the flavors are there.
And you actually use less salt that way by adding it little by little. Then right at the end, trying to throw salt, change flavor, or to add to this. So season the produce you're using at that stage.
There you go. Season as you go. Taste.
Do as you go.
Olga, the fish is very much in the oven. So right up front, egg whites and salt to make the little salt house, like Renee called it. And that was covered on top to make it's going to bake like almost like a clay oven. It's going to melt it all in there. So that's all in there at 180. Renee, pancakes for brekkie. You are having a go at my eating anything for once. If you make pancakes, have it for breakfast. And even better, we've got loads of pancake recipes up on here. Sherry says she needs to learn how to make her own wine, so she can obviously then have it.
Sherry wants to make her own wine.
Because she can have anything she wants as long as she makes it. She wants to make her own wine. Right, Joy, the olives that are put in as an option for your salad, you can just pop those in towards the end. So whatever the source of fat is that you want to add to your dish, and that can go right in what is the end. So cool, everyone on track. Fish is in the oven. Got a little bit of pickling going on to the veg there. We're making the salad. The mash has pretty much been done, and it looks like that's where the next bit of action is going to happen.
Yeah, so just that refreshing that we spoke about earlier on, some ice water, you just get those beautiful colors that are coming out. As you can see, the broccoli comes alive almost. And then quite a cool tool that I was always used to listen to, someone that I used to work with many years ago. He always used to call the sieve tool of refinement, and I just think it's such a nice way of explaining
I
it.
think I would.
I think you did too. No names mentioned, but yeah, for me it's just something that's still in my mind as a tool of refinement that you can actually take mash, because there's nothing worse, I think, when you take that mashed potato and get those lumps and chunks in there. It's not so pleasant. Where this just takes it to another level, and you get like this absolutely smoothie, almost like horrible to say, that smash in a packet.
Yeah.
But this comes with absolute credibility.
You made it yourself.
And you made it yourself.
I think this was one of the greatest things I ever saw. Was one of these cooking channels kind of things. Someone doing mash.
It's amazing.
It changed it completely.
Yeah. It does. It takes it to another level. So you cook mash. Like two things for me is chicken and mashed potatoes. So when people go like, "Oh, chicken's so boring," anyone can make it. No, they can't, because it's destroyed 99% of the time. But when it's moist and delicious, and you go, "Oh wow, that is just next level," or you have mash and go, "I've never tasted mash like that." Especially when we add our little infusion over here that Bo was playing with, and for me, that just makes the whole thing absolutely worthwhile. So we thought we'd add that little component for those who haven't seen it before, and that's kind of what you get. These beautiful little snowflakes on there almost. It just looks really special.
Yeah.
Like all
You've got 9 minutes.
clouds and what is it?
It is. I can throw with mash potatoes.
It's hot. It's hot. Right.
Yes, Troy, the olives are fine on the Eat Your Way Lean challenge. A good source of fats in your third week here, and they come with some fiber. So we're looking at fat sources, and that also give us fiber. Avocado, nuts, seeds, olives, source of fat, but fiber, not just adding oil to it. Nice way to go.
All right, so we got our mash that we've passed through our sieve, which is a fancy word. We've also got our little reduction over here, which we're going to pour through. Keeping all these little garnishes here, which have just basically imparted all those flavors in there. We keep that there. And this over here, you know, a good whiff there. Pick up with that garlic and thyme. And we're just going to throw again a little bit in at a time, just as we need it. And then obviously our Parmesan is also one of those salty components. So a lot of people think just because we have a restaurant called Salt that you should actually know that you're eating salt. Not necessarily. It should be integrated and well integrated into the food. It shouldn't stand out that it's salty, because sometimes we have had the odd occasion when people say, "Oh, the dinner's so salty," because it's also people's mindset. They understand they're eating salt and they go, "Oh, it's salty," but they forget it's not. But they also, South Africans, add salt before they taste, so that in our food is bad news because it's already perfectly seasoned. So obviously our Parmigiano in there, we're going to add that into that. Just make it absolutely delicious. Never be shy. I believe if you're going to add something, make sure you do a good job adding it.
Another cheat day. It's 3 weeks.
This is going to kill you, I'm sorry.
That's half the day gone.
Going to have to start this game again. Alright, so add a little bit more of that infusion.
Look how you haven't added the butter yet.
It's inside it,
It's mashed to serve 17 people, that's why it's all fun.
All right, so that's kind of what we're looking for, that lovely smooth flavor there. And then obviously the seasoning. I don't have a spoon, so I'm going to be a little bit cheeky. And COVID friendly. A nice good helping of salt in there. Obviously we've done this before, so go easy first.
And taste as you go.
And taste as you go. Thanks. It's actually quite interesting. I went to a guest house because we do a lot of the dining at home before we had the restaurant. And you go to people and they see you tasting and they go, "Oh, I don't even taste my food," a housewife would say. And she says, "But my guests all love my food." Maybe they're lying to you.
How would you know?
That's it. All right, so a little bit more. Normally I would put this back on the heat just to kind of release all the salt in there, so that it infuses straight into that mash, where now we're just adding it. It needs to dissolve a little bit more, but we'll do that just before serve it. Adrian, want to try a little bit there? It's coming together, but as we heat it up, you'll see those flavors will then get even more integrated in there. All right, so this we can put one side. So just before we serve, we bring it up to temperature again. We'll assemble our salad, and then obviously the fish in the oven is probably just over halfway to 3/4 of the way, I'd say.
So check your fish at home, particularly if you've got a smaller one. So you had a beast that went in there.
So our fish is about 2 kilos.
Sorry?
Our fish is about 2 kilograms, but you do want that salt to actually sit on the outside.
So what are we looking for? Guys who are checking it at home, what are they looking out for?
If you hit the salt and it sounds a little bit hollow, I think then you're very close to being done.
So have a check on it. You can give it a little tap. It sounds sort of hollow. You must probably close.
Yeah.
Give it another minute. There you go. Proper enough.
I think the biggest test of this whole thing is that secret. Put it in for the estimate time. So what was the fish you did for 25 minutes? The weight on that little smaller one? So
1.3 kilos was 20 minutes to 21 minutes.
Okay.
But from then it doesn't actually change a lot in time.
Right.
So it's just about that salted seal. So then you're looking at about 4 minutes on per kilogram max.
Yeah. So that's very important because the secret is when you open it, you hope like hell it's actually cooked. So we've done functions where we got 30, 40 people and we crack it open, praying like crazy. And when it's open, it's cooked or it's not overcooked. But we've been doing it for a while, so it just makes it a little bit easier when we actually are doing this a number of times. But the first one might be slightly trial and error, but after that,
All the magic happened in the last 2 minutes. So move on.
And we have eaten
so the
and
fish
we're
is
done.
So you didn't miss anything, just a little bit of poor chats in the background. But, so we were just catching up on the types of fish to use, but it should be close to kind of checking what's going on there, hopefully almost ready to go. Give a little knock on it. If it sounds hard and almost hollow, you must probably close.
let's get over it quickly.
There you go. Sorry guys, it's in and out. I don't know if this is ESCOM playing games with us and load shedding having its part, but we are at the finishing stages to put it all out the oven and put things together. So your salad should be all kind of ingredients ready to go. The mash done, whether you did the potatoes or the collie, and the flavour that you've got into that. We're going to assemble the salad, dish up the mash, make sure it's nice and warm, and we're about to get the fish out of the oven to crack it and see what it's like.
Cool, excellent. Right, do you want to test your fish? What do you think? Are you happy? This is the moment of truth.
The moment of truth.
So, are we looking for pace? Are the viewers happy with the pace that we're going at?
Yeah, let us know what you guys are doing, if you, where you are at with it, what your fish
Just make a buffer for a minute.
We've got you can top your glasses up. We've got another minute before our fish comes out, and we can get plating. So get all of your salad ingredients together, whatever veg you've got there, sort of based on what you've been doing, and your mash ready to go. And we'll get through to that. Saturday as well, hopefully you guys want to come and join us. So Craig's got a lovely little brunch menu for anyone who's going to come through. But otherwise, we'll be back for Jeff Gabbs. You're going to be taking part, eh?
I'll be here.
Yeah.
Sporting.
Nice. We're going to have to see see how well Topay's got you in form.
Okay, cool. So then we've got two options. We've got a lovely space down by the dam, which would be great if we could do outdoor, but if it's raining, then we'll have the pleasure of probably doing it around the fountain inside the cloisters. So what a pleasure. So
Best, either of those sound like pretty good options. So it's beautiful in here. If you haven't taken a trip out to Waterford, come have a look. And just if someone want to come visit, what sort of things can they get?
experiences.
Get experiences.
So multi experience outside the high tea, which I was told today, high tea, the difference between afternoon tea and high tea. So afternoon tea is smaller, it's always cucumber sandwiches or those kind of sandwiches with a scone and then a cake. High tea was always served to labourers in the UK who need something more substantial. So high tea, though we think, I suppose, sounds that's a higher class dish, it's actually it's a labourer's food. And it was always much more hearty. So it was always like there was fish and there was meat and there's all things involved. So we've got lovely high tea, fish and meat and all things involved, with some wine. The food here, of course, then we're doing picnics, but outside that, there's of course all the tastings with our wine, and then we have a wine drive on the farm, which takes you on a 3-hour journey through that sustainability project, and then to 2 stops. One is a white stop up by the Chardonnay vineyard. One is the red stop, and you sit at that red stop underneath a tree on a deck, looking at almost every growing region in this country. So yeah, it's stunning. We also do a porcupine trail walk. So there's 3 attempts for all you Jeff fitters who fancy something at the weekend. And then you have 3 activity levels.
Starts walking behind us. So look at
that. With picnics and a guy who will take you as a guide. So anyway,
sounds beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you want to? I don't know if that other camera's just buffering a bit. Do you want to give us a close up of that on this main camera?
Yeah.
Have a look at this.
Go. So that is our little fish. You move it a bit. Where's the closest you can see anywhere?
That looks good. And if you give it a little tap, it's hot. There you go.
Is that one still buffering?
Yeah, that one fine.
Is that one fine? Okay, cool. I'll do it here. So here we go. Now I want to, you can hear that. Nice and hollow. Obviously it was undercooked, it wasn't neat.
Yeah.
So I just want to break salt off. Take little bits of crust. It is warm. Try and use a tong rather than your hands. Don't have a lot of feeding left, so there we go. So we've broken it open, and now the moment of truth to see if it's cooked. We're just going to put our little palette knife down there. We're going to pull the fish off. The wrong side of the bone there. Here we go.
Oh, juicy, moist.
Wow, look at
it. Smells great.
There we go. So it is.
Well done, buddy. You did it. It's good. It's delicious.
To do this Saturday was a lot more.
You can stop sweating now.
It was a lot more stressful with 30 guests waiting there to be fed, I must say. Yeah, if we can't eat, it's fine. If we just bang it in the oven or press pause.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there we go. I've got a couple of nice pieces of fish we've broken off. Lovely. Seasoned all the way through. I'm going to continue.
Look at that.
Olga, the pepper goes into the salad, so we're just going to sprinkle the salad with the variety of veg that you've got prepped and sliced and ready to go.
Right, so thank you both. It's perfectly cooked. So as you can see, it's not too difficult as long as you stick to those time frames. Over here, I've just taken the lettuce, torn it up a little bit, and just to kind of create a little bit of dimension and depth. Again, food for me should always be elevated, look nice, have a bit of depth and volume in it, which is very important. And then obviously little peppers that we cut earlier, some of our cucumber.
I got the cheek.
And Damien said he's keen to try the eye of the fish, I believe. And he's going to show us on camera how to do it. So, right, and here's our lovely pickle. For me, it just adds a nice little fresh thing to the salad. And again, sprinkle that around nicely. Broccoli, you can just put a nice few sheets around, keep it very simple. Don't have to do too much chopping or slicing. And then obviously our last component is our fish. Oops, not our last component, I lied. our mashed
So it's
potato.
a mash on this.
So the mash just needs a little bit of heat on there, as I said earlier, just to bring it back up and give it that lovely texture that we're looking for and expect in mashed potato. It needs a couple of seconds on the fire, so no problem there. And the secret really is this amazing moisture in there, and I think that really actually does the whole trick for me. As this dish is so understated, there's very little to kind of get excited about other than the juiciness of the fish, the freshness of the ingredients, and obviously the richness of that mash in there. I've also got another cheat. My favorite thing, I like to choose an emulsion. It's one of those things that for me is almost like a mayonnaise almost, if you like, and we made this ourselves. So the Spanish do like almost kind of a milk and garlic infusion with a bit of oil in there, so it's very similar to mayonnaise. I love to just dot that on. So again, you can just pull from there as a flavor profile. It's literally cool, it's very chefy in a little squirt bottle, and then obviously our mash.
Beautiful. So guys at home, hopefully you're putting that salad on the plate, the fish is out the oven, looking great, tasting great, moist, just peel it apart and get it on there. And the last component, the mash. You don't collie or potato or whichever it is. And that's going to roll it off. Looks epic.
Alright, and that's it for me. That's pretty much it. Very, very much yummy, tasty, but simple and just delicious.
Amazing.
Alright, there we go.
That looks really good.
Right. I don't know if you want to have a little sample, I'll get you some cutlery. Let's do that.
Guys, taste yours at home, post your pics, let us know what it looks like, what it tastes like, and stick it up on Jeff Together, or Jeff Nourish, and let's see what it is. Tag us in it, tag Waterford in it as well, and it's always lovely to see what it looks like. And we're going to taste ours here quickly, because this is the moment of truth.
Does it need a bit of salt?
So good. I'm such a fan of mash. It doesn't happen a lot at our house. Priya's not crazy about it. But I reckon this one, yeah, really good. Freshness, flavor, absolutely lovely. Moisture from the fish, great way to cook it. So it's a technique, which is lovely. So if you didn't cook a lot more tonight, it's a technique. You can maybe have a crack at it over the weekend, get a nice piece of fish, get that in there, nice hot oven, and cook it off. So it's lovely and a good way to kind of finish it all off. That's amazing. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. All the colors. Looks great. We're going to tuck in and we're going to have a little glass of some Waterford as we go as well, maybe a little rosemary. I saw a couple of you had that and some favourites, I think, so that's fabulous. You can see it being poured there. A beautiful little pink drink for the boys. Guys, get it on a plate, taste it, post it, let us know what it looks like. And then join us on Saturday as well for Jeff Games, which is live from here. And then if you're in the area, come join us for a brunch as well. Guys, thanks so much for having us.
Pink drink for the boys.
Yeah.
51% of men drink rosé. 49% of women drink rosé. You heard it here first.
So pink drinks are for the boys.
Yes, they are.
We've got the stats. So you don't have to feel bad pouring it for your husbands at home. You can tell them they're part of the majority if they actually have.
Remember, tonight's only 4 cheat days.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. Because tomorrow is a bit of a rest day, but if, like us, you've joined us on a glass of wine and a mash, maybe just get a little bit of training in the morning and you guys are going to be all right. So, guys, thanks so much for having us. Absolutely epic. Pop out, come visit the farm, check it out, or maybe just go pick up a bottle and toast the beautiful week that we've had. And join us on Saturday to kind of around it. Guys, if you finished your challenge today, well done. If you're in week 3, a few more days, keep pushing hard, and then have a look out next week for the new challenge you're going to have as well. It's going to be some fun happening. Guys, cheers. Amazing. Thanks very much. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you very much.
Until next time, guys. See you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.
feed here was on the same. Just give a little bit of guys from the media. That